You know, it is I think if you go back in history in South Africa, the greatest time for amateur golf was the 50s, the late 40s and 50s. And it's a time when a whole bunch of guys won the South African Open that were amateurs. Never mind the amateur. They were winning the Open. Ronnie Glennie, Mickey Jenks, Denis Hutchinson right here, who was the last person to do it in 1959, Arthur Walker, Rich Taylor, and Jimmy Boyd. So I think 6 of them won the Open in the space of about 11 years, actually. And so that was an unbelievable time for amateur golf. And you know, just if you think that there was nobody playing in those days, you had Gary Player and Bobby Locke, who were both, at their time, two of the best players in the world. So, you know, there were people who could play golf at that time, but the amateurs were just phenomenal. But I think the group that we've got now, I think, are just unbelievable. Bill Kaninaba has just turned pro. Jaden Shaper just turned pro. Casey Jarvis, and there are a whole bunch of others. And I don't want to go through all the names, but there are a bunch of, are just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, South Africa can look forward over the next 10 years, and hopefully even longer than that, to have people on the top of the leaderboards in golf tournaments all over the world. We'll be staying up on Thursday nights and Friday nights and Saturday nights and Sunday nights watching South African win tournaments. Okay, and I think, you know, it's very important, I think, to thank Johan Rupert. He put together the squad for amateur golf. And I think that is the reason we're producing so many top amateur golfers right now.
Really, I mean, the Open this year, I really enjoyed it. And Shaper was unbelievably impressed with his play. Tiny little guy, wonderful width in his swing and speed. And never mind, I honestly had a feeling this year that the amateurs had a chance to maybe win the championship. And what I've seen here this week, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, I watched a lot of the golf this week and seen some spectacular play. They really are, both the boys and the girls, and I mean, it's unbelievable. And I thought, great performance from him, and I'm just sorry he's turned pro a little bit early, I think, and let's hope things work out well for him. But it was a wonderful feeling being there, and it was, I think that 70 years in a row I've been to the Open. It seems bloody ridiculous. No wonder I can't hit the ball 100 yards anymore.
Well, fortunately we have better weather this week than the horror stories we've had of Humewood. Hutchie, the amateur golfers at this stage, what has impressed you most about them? Obviously they can all play the game, but there seems to be something about this current crop in South Africa that just sets them aside from what we've seen before.
Well, I think, Richard, really, what I've seen this year, what I really like, apart from my sort of, I think I've been a couple of slowish players, they really get on with the game, they're busy, they apparently have got no fear at all. They take on shots, and I think great belief, and I think it's wonderful coaching, and what Grant has done, I think it really has been fantastic, but they hit the ball so far now, I can't believe it. I mean, it just gets up there and keeps on going, and I've seen some truly amazing shots, and I think that's probably, equipment really helps them. The ball is going, as I say, so far, and maybe one of these days they've got to think about sorting, because the courses are getting too long already for the average amateur golfer. I mean, he doesn't get out of the clubs and the ball's what the top players do, and it's just becoming too difficult for the ordinary player. And I'd like to see something done with the ball to generate and bring the ordinary amateur closer to the stars in the game. The gulf now between the good players and the ordinary player is almost too big now, and I think that it's upsetting a lot of people, and a lot of people falling out of the game, which is tragic.
But it gives me great pleasure to welcome Motshidisi Mohono to our panel today. We have worked together for a while, but we have never shared this sort of space before. We've never worked in this sort of capacity. Motshidisi, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Rich.
Maybe just give us a little bit of a background of your journey in sport and sport broadcasting, how you got here.
So I used to work, good morning everybody, my apologies, good morning. I started on radio back in 2008. It was just after I turned 19, so I was pretty young at the time. And I worked for the Gauteng-based youth radio station, YFM. I did news there. 3 years later, my colleague left to join Supersport, Tatomiyeng, and I took over the sports desk at the time. Because we were a very young, hip and happening newsroom, loved our sport, banter so much about it, particularly the football. And looking back now as we're talking, The niche sport is not where we had our finger on the pulse, unfortunately, back then. And then after radio, moved on to television. So you and I worked together. I joined 2011, we worked together 2012 at SuperSport Blitz. People love people's stories because we love seeing ourselves in someone else as well. We love, because it's the thread that connects us, our stories, and how they almost intersect and intertwine between us.
A man who's also told many stories in the golfing space. Another one of our colleagues as well. It's lovely to have him here this morning, OG Molefe. OG, welcome. Tell us a little about your journey in the sport as well.
Good morning, everyone. It's sort of similar to Mods because I also started at YFM in 2004. I've always loved sport, and I've always believed in just working hard and trying to get in. And I studied information technology at school, and I got bored in the IT sector. So I spent 18 months bothering the sports editor at YFM to try and give me an opportunity. And once he eventually did that, then I grabbed it with both hands. And working for about 3 years in golf as well, I got sort of interested in television, and a spot was open at ETV and they were looking for someone. And even though I knew nothing about television, I threw myself head first and learned a lot. And I spent 11 years there, and 2019, beginning of 2019, I was speaking to Louis last week that I remember in 2008, that Olympic year, I went for an audition at SuperSport. And someone was like, oh, you're going to get this job. Oh, definitely. When the big bosses come back, you'll sign a contract. And I actually waited another 10 years before Louis gave me a contract. So, so the past year, working for SuperSport has been absolutely amazing. And as Motshidisi said, I'm all about telling stories, and golf stories particularly, because they don't get as much mainstream coverage. And I think it is definitely our job to, tell people about the youngsters that are playing here this week, who I think, if you look at, the golfers in South Africa, Dale, if you go overseas and the people that know and talk about Hachi and Dale, they've put our country on the map. And I think this next generation, it is our job to put them out there so that people know that South Africa continues to produce great golfers.
Thank you very much for having me. I was actually just, as I walked in this morning, reminded by Wendy Huddy that I've now been a member here 20 years. So it seems a very long time ago. I was 10 years old. That was the age I was allowed to become a member. Originally we were at Kensington, and then moved over here, and I became Royal Johannesburg in Kensington. And many fond memories, fantastic place to be a member. Chris and his team are wonderful, and also won a few tournaments here, so it's a very special place in my heart.
I wanted to ask you about those tournaments as well. You've got a glittering amateur career as well. Tell us about some of the highlights of that.
I don't like to really talk much on myself, but my first big memories was the South African Open. I was an amateur, 14 years old, playing here on the East. I think I was 8 shots behind on the last day, shot 63. And it was quite funny. I knew I was kind of in with the running, but here I was in the clubhouse having a Coke with my buddies and that, and the next one everybody's like, you've won. So it was quite a remarkable feeling, and that was kind of the start of everything in my amateur career. Went on to win the South African Amateur Double for the first time that year, and got on the next few years. I know I currently hold the record for being the youngest player, but it's under threat today, so records are made to be broken, and it's fantastic to see young talent coming through.
Actually, how important is it for a South African golfer to have events like this that we've seen here this week, in terms of being able to ply your trade, to test yourself against the best in the country, and to compete at this level?
Oh, it's so important. I only got back from Australia yesterday, but I've been following with great interest on social media. I think it's fantastic that Aon have come on board. Made it feel very professional, and that's kind of what I've heard throughout social media and talking to Schalk this morning. And it makes you feel important, and the fact that also men and women are coming together and trying to showcase the game on the same stage. It's starting to happen throughout golf now. A few weeks ago we were in Australia. We had an LPGA event, European Tour men. We played 2 different golf courses like this. Men go off one tee, you go off the next, so it just carries on, and it creates great interest for worldwide also now starting to play for the same money. We played for the same money as the men that week, and it's starting to grow completely. And I was saying earlier as well, Aon came on board last year on the LPGA and the PGA, creating this risk-reward challenge where at the end of the year, $1 million for the winner and $1 million for the men. So finally we're starting to also get even playing fields.
You guys have obviously provided a wonderful example to the rest of South Africa to follow. You guys are the shining light in rugby circles in the country. Have you noticed great examples for golfers in South Africa to follow in terms of the talent that we are producing, the players that are coming through? Have you noticed that there are good examples for people to follow here in South Africa?
Yeah, well, I've always said I could not understand, although we've won 3 World Cups. I mean, from a golfing perspective, after the Second World War, we've won the second most majors. I mean, that is just staggering. A little country in the southern part of Africa. It is, for me, I'm passionate. I only took up golf when I'm 14. I wanted to be a professional while I'm playing rugby because I thought I love golf and I love rugby, and that is factually so. Unfortunately, Rupert squashed my dreams of saying, you're good, but you're definitely not good enough to play and play. You're going to die of hunger soon if you want to try to turn pro. But for me, it's quite inspirational seeing these young kids coming through and having the systems and the vision of doing today. Today having, I think it's the first time Chris said that you have the women and the men playing in the amateur competition together. That's what we want. We want to have inclusivity where everyone can play. And with Schalk and Aon getting on board, this is the future. And I mean, it's although they say golf doesn't have now the numbers and there's a lot of more challenges, we have to get everyone. We have to get the girls. I bought my wife clubs to say, come play with my 3 boys. And for me, it's just great to see this game. How can I compete with my dad that I love spending time with? How can I compete with him? Yes, handicap-wise, and it gives me a big, how can I say, hiding every now and then. But now I've got a 7-year-old boy that I can play golf with. And that's a big thing. If you can get the families involved and the wives, and there's a family affair, then I think we're on the right path.
I'm David Stratton from Aon. David, thank you so much firstly for your involvement in this event and for coming on board. What drew you to this property though?
Is this on? Yes. Can you hear me? So, yeah, I'm probably wearing 3 hats here today. The important one obviously is the Aon one, but I have played in a number of South African amateurs, and I have been the captain of this golf club. But I'm delighted that our firm has embraced golf. And Ashleigh just mentioned, many of you would have seen last year the Risk and Reward Challenge on the PGA and LPGA tours, and that's underway again this year. You will also, some of you may be aware that we're going to be associated with the Ryder Cup next year. So we're a global firm. We're in 50 countries, 70 countries. No, but we're a global professional services firm, global reach, and I'm delighted that globally we've taken golf as a vehicle, and that we're doing the same thing here. Started very recently with our branding being on the handicap cards, and personally I was delighted that we've taken on the joint amateur championships. The first time. I'm not sure if this has been done in other countries, but it's certainly the first time here, and I'm glad that we're there on what is pretty much a historic occasion.
David, you've played golf at an incredibly high level as well, and you've seen the way that the sport has grown and progressed in the country. What has impressed you most about where South African golf is headed to at this stage?
Well, yeah, I think Schalk hit the nail on the head just a moment ago. This country punches well above its weight. There's no doubt about that in world golfing terms. We have a lot going for us, though. We've got wonderful golf courses. We have a wonderful golfing structure, and particularly for competitive golf, and weather, of course. So we've got a lot going for us. It's very pleasing to see what GolfRSA is doing and has done in the recent past. to really drive golf in this country. And I mean, we've got a number of our leading amateurs ranked in the World Amateur Rankings, which is a relatively recent development. And we've had, I mean, we just have to look at some of the performances that we're seeing from the likes of Casey Jarvis and Jaden Shaper. I'm gobsmacked at just how good these guys are. I played my first South African amateur, I think, in 1973. I don't think the winning score in the stroke play was under par in those days, and certainly in 1980 the amateur was played at this club, and if my memory serves me correctly, the winning score for 72 holes, as it then was in those days, was 3 over par. I would suggest that if 72 holes was played in stroke play format here, I'd be guessing somewhere between 12 and 16 under par would be the winning score, and I mean that's a tremendous amount of progress, and there's a lot. You know, obviously the golf ball goes further, the guys hit the ball a lot further. But what impresses me with a lot of these youngsters now is the professional approach that they already have. They're doing the physical conditioning. There are mental coaches. I mean, all of those things. You know, and you know, Dale and I come from a similar era. Those are things we had to figure out for ourselves. And I mean, you know, you can see just how much gym work Hazy did. But it's, I mean, these are all things that are contributing.